single line on every single EPR. That would be impossible to do. There's just not enough time to do so, especially on the Master Sergeant boards where you're reviewing the Tech Sergeant records. That's just a lot of information to take in. So you're looking for key data points. You're looking for what we call differentiators, things that differentiate or separate, in my case, Master Sergeants at the Master Sergeant levels. And we'll talk more about that here in the next coming slides. On your right, you can see what the central board factors are. These are as they exist today. Now, be advised, there's actually working groups right now that are looking to kind of alter these, to kind of define what we value in our senior NCO core. So right now you see 7 categories. There's efforts underway to expand that to 10 and completely change these. As an example, in the specific achievements, that's generally where your awards come into play, right? Well, there's a thought process that we should decouple awards completely from the promotion process. So down the road, in a few years, you may see awards being taken out of that calculus when we kind of come up with a board score. So there's our category, right? Performance is basically, you know, what are the EPR? What are your EPR ratings? Are you ready now? Over to the old right, if you will. Education. So education is one of 7 categories. You do not need a bachelor's degree necessarily to be selected from E7 to E8. Moreover, the degree, you are not docked any points for having a degree outside of your AFSC specialty. I hear that a lot. That's not true. So you may not be giving as much credence or as much, if you had a degree in your AFSC, I may look at that more favorably if you don't, but I'm not going to dock you any points. A degree is good. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. You do not need a degree to make it to the E7 in E8 and E9. So breadth of experience, that's just, what have you done within your career field and outside of your career field. So DSTs, right? DSTs are a great opportunity for breadth of experience, whether that's First Sergeant, MTI, or what have you. So that's breadth of experience. Job responsibility, we look at your rank and what are you doing. If you're a Master Sergeant and you're performing technician level work, well, that's probably not going to be reflect very favorably on your board score. So that's what we're looking for there. Our professional competence, that is what your raters actually say about you, right? What's that push line say? What are the remarks in your EPR? And that's how we kind of come up and define that category. Specific achievements is easy, right? That's awards, that's decorations, those types of things. And yes, at least from my perspective, when it comes to medals, we do try to line up PCS medals with your assignments, right? So board members will know if you're missing a PCS medal and rate accordingly, right? So when you don't get a PCS medal, it can reflect negatively on your board score, because the thought process is something must have happened during that rating period. Failed PT test, whatever happened to have you not get a medal for that duration. However, one thing that's constantly comes up is we'll get an extended tour medal, and then 8 months later they won't get a PCS medal, and people perceive that as having a negative impact on their board score. That's not true. Board members are seasoned people. You have to have at least a year as a chief before you can even be eligible to be a board member. So they know these things exist. They understand. They're going to be able to put 2 and 2 relatively easy together. So leadership, that's exactly there's, I don't think we need to explain leadership. How many airmen are you leading? What kind of stratification did you get? What kind of force distribution as a tech sergeant did you get? So that's kind of leadership in a nutshell. Those are the 7 categories. So one thing I can't emphasize enough is, as a board member, when you look at these records, this is the charge that's read to you before you score the sheets. However, there's no matrix in front of you where you're checking off, well, this person's got X in performance, X in education, X in leadership. That doesn't exist. So what you're doing as you're going through the records is you're taking all this into consideration when you're giving one final score. So these are only the charges that are read for you in the board, but when you actually read the records, It's all from your experience at how you derive at that final score. So there is no matrix on every one of these categories, if that makes sense. Okay, so senior ranger stratifications, right? This is kind of the big thing in the for promotion into the top three. And if you're a tech sergeant going to mass sergeant, essentially your enlisted force distribution, that is your de facto stratification. It is. So all that is we're trying to distinguish who the top 15% are, or top 10 or top 20% are at the wing levels, at least according to the commanders. So do they matter? You know, I'm just going to be honest with you. Yeah, they matter. And if you don't believe me, you can go out and so AFPC doesn't hide this. You can go up to my peers and you can pull the promotion statistics, and they have the statistics of those who get promoted with strats and those who get promoted without strats. So all that's codified for you. In some career fields, the selection rate with a stratification is 100%, meaning that no one got promoted in specific career fields without a strat. However, there are other career fields that the promotion rate is, you know, pretty high. Like, so I'll take 3Fs for example. And the 3F career field, 15% of the total promotees got promoted without a strat. So a lot of it depends on what career field you're in to determine how much of that stratification matters. So I encourage you to go out, pull those statistics, and just see what they say. A big thing is for stratification. Your Course 14 is no longer required, and your CCF is no longer required. However, when we come to CCF, you do need an equivalent level degree. So this is common sense to me, right? 3 to 4 years ago, an airman could have a master's degree, but because they didn't have a CCF, they weren't eligible for wing stratification, which is insane. So we changed that a few years ago, that if you have any equivalent applied science degree or whatever or higher, then you do qualify for wing stratification. I'm sure you already know this, but again, the senior master sergeant, you can only stratify the top 10%, and the chief master sergeant only the top 20%. So there you have it. So that's this slide. Next slide, please. Uh-oh. Okay, so again, I'm not insulting anyone's intelligence, but this brief is meant for those individuals who may have not tested yet. So when I got my first board score, that was the first time I ever saw a board score. I had no idea how it was calculated. I had nothing. I was just giving this in my WAPS verification sheet, or excuse me, in my WAPS score sheet. So I want to make sure that our airmen are cognizant of what a board score looks like. So here it is. This is what you'll get. When you get the AFPC, when you get your WAPS RIP, if you will. So here's how a board consists of. It consists of 2 chiefs and 1 colonel, and a board president who's typically a flag officer, a general officer, or higher. So again, I told you how we sit in front of a screen and we put our score 6 to 10 on the bottom. So 3 members do that. So here's the calculus, right? I score 7.5, a second member scores an 8, the third member scores another 8. So that total is 23.5, and you multiply that by the multiplier, which is 15, right? And that's how you come up with the 352.5. That is your grouping. If you hear the term grouping, what that is when you looked at the board, your grouping, where do you fit within your career field, right? So if you look at 352.5 here in this example, it is above the medium average. The median here is 345. So if you are to the left of that 345, your records are better than average. So don't get too hung up on the overall score. So don't get hung up on that overall 352.5. What you need to concentrate on is the grouping, because your score is going to fluctuate every given year depending on who those 3 board members are that look at it. But what's important is where you fit with the rest of your career field. So again, not the score, but the grouping. And the groupings are the 320, the 312, the 405. You can see the number of selects and non-selects. So that's where you are in that grouping. So again, this is just more how the board works. So you don't discuss the records at all. You're just literally going through and putting your score in. The only time you will discuss the records if there's a difference of more than a point. So if I have somebody as 7.5 and another member has him as a 9 or her as a 9, all those records are put aside, and then typically we discuss them before lunch. And then we would come together and we'd have the discussions between the two board members that disagree. And we would attempt to come to a consensus, like, hey, well, what were you seeing? Man, I didn't see that. Okay, I missed that. Let me alter my score. Let me bring it up to an 8. That gets you within that 1 point threshold. If we can't come to agreement, then it goes to the board president, who's that typical that flag officer, who will actually make the determination call. So I will tell you, on our board, out of literally thousands of records, right? We only disagreed 6 times. And just for some inside baseball, the disagreement was never between the two chiefs. It was between one of the chiefs and the colonels, right? So and then we were always able to work that out. We never sent any of ours to the board president to make that decision for us. It was always worked out between the colonel and the chief. But again, you don't talk about the records unless there's that 1 point difference, in which there really was. And like I said, in my case, it was only 6. So what does that tell us? That means this is not a secret. It means all your chiefs and all your colonels are looking for the same kind of criteria when it comes to promotion, even across the career fields. So this is not a difficult nut to crack, if you will, we're all looking for the same thing. So next slide, please. Okay, so if you go to My Peers and you go to your records, right, you'll see over in the left-hand column, you'll see the category is as met, right? You have what we call your as is records, and then what's called your as met records. So your as met records, AFPC every year will give a file freeze date. So the file freeze date is the date that your records are considered final, right? Those are the records they send to the board for us to review. So if you go there, it's in My Peers. It's not a secret. It's under selection folder, as met. And those are the same records we review. If you look in that records, you won't see your SERP. Your SERP is never in your total records. We get what's called an OCB, right? So which is a modified version of your SERP. So because every year the Air Force defines what material, what categories they want the board members to review and what they don't want the board members to review.
Bobby.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I heard somebody say something. So, for an example, going from tech sergeant to master sergeant, the Air Force has decided that education is not a category they want board members to consider, at least within the SERP. So that data is redacted from the SERP. So I won't know if a tech sergeant has a master's degree or whatever from your SERP, right? I will only be able to glean that information if it's in your EPR. So supervisors that are out there, this is why it's important for you. Let's say the airman has got their degree and it's outside. I'm talking tech sergeants, right? So tech sergeants, you only review the EPRs within the current grade, right? So we're talking 3 EPRs. If they earned that master's or bachelor's degree outside of that 3, let's say they earned it as a senior airman, the board's not going to know because it's not on the OCB unless the supervisor puts it into their record. And here's how you can do that. Let's say they get a certification. You can just say something like amplified bachelor's of science, earn whatever certification. Bam, you just told the board right there that this member already has a bachelor's degree. So that's important for supervisors to know and then recognize on their EPRs within their selection years. So from masters to seniors and senior chief, that the education is put on the OCB. So you don't have to do that for those grades. But for tech to master, you do. So here's an example of an OCB, the modified SERP, which is actually what the board gets to see. So you can see right there the assignments there. From there, you can kind of glean breadth of experience, where this individual has been, what duties have they done. There's where your decorations are listed. So again, it's kind of easy to marry the decorations up to the assignments. It's not a problem there. And as you can see, the advanced degrees are not listed there. So that's what your OCB looks like. And again, this isn't hidden. Your OCB is in your My Peers folder. It's in your selection folder under ASMET records. You can go in there and look at it, and that's the same records that the board reviewed. So while we're on this slide, another topic that continues to come up is duty titles. I will tell you, it does not matter. I never looked at a single duty title because there's just not enough time. I don't care. It's all about grow where you're planted, right? What did you do to set yourself apart from your peers in the position that you had? So that's the only thing that matters. Don't get too tied up on the superintendent, the flight chief. Nobody gives a crap. I'm serious. Nobody cares. So just you have to exceed in the role that you're in. And homesteading, so the old homesteading phase is kind of hanging out at one base for a prolonged period of time. Not recommended. However, if you can do multiple jobs on that single base, then that can help with the breadth of experience career field, right? So let's say, so for our maintainers, right? There's only so many there's only so many places around the world they can go, right? But if a maintainer steps outside of their AFSC, and let's say they do a first sergeant duty, well, that's breadth of experience, right? And it's not that maintainer's fault that they can only go to a couple of bases, usually between here and Osan, right? We know that, and we're not going to hold that against them. But we would expect them to look for other opportunities within the base that they're on to expand their breadth of experience, not only within their career field, but within their Air Force. Because we all know that airmen don't just have questions pertaining to their AFSC, they have questions pertaining to the Air Force as a whole. And in order for us to answer those effectively, we need to have to experience some of that for ourselves. So that's the whole breadth of experience in a nutshell. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the biggest thing where that's hard for new tech sergeants and master sergeants to understand, right? When I talk to them, everyone thinks that their EPR is awesome, right? Everyone thinks they are. That's because they mostly are. As I look through a lot of EPRs, a lot of the accomplishments are the same, right? It's everybody's EPR looks good. It just does. However, what are you doing that separates you from your peers? If you're just coming to work and you're doing a great job, that's not going to be enough. You need what we first talked about earlier, and that's distinguishers, right? You need 2 or 3 lines in every EPR that set you apart from your peers, whether that's a stratification, whether that's leading an Air Force or an AFSC effort. Those are the types of things that you need. You need leadership outside of your bubble. That's the biggest thing that we try to get across. You don't need to be doing hot dog sales and running booster clubs and things of that nature, but you need to show some kind of leadership outside of your AFSC in the ability to work with other senior NCOs to lead, to work with outside of your AFSCs. So how can you do that? Well, you can look right there, chaired senior NCO induction, director junior listed appreciation day. We're talking one event a year, right? I know all of you, most of us are busy, especially at this age. We have kids, households to run, all that. So there is not enough time to dedicate both to the mission and to all these external activities. But I'm convinced there is enough time to do one, at least one a year. Find something that makes you happy and something that you're excited about, and do that one thing. You don't need to, like I said, you don't need to do a slew of things. You don't need to be involved in everything. Just one where you're leading airmen and you're helping airmen and you're leading other senior NCOs. So those are the difference makers right there. That's what the differentiators or examples of differentiators that you need. So this is taken from an older EPR, so that we can no longer strat at the flight and at the squadron or at the group levels. You can only, one stratification can only come from the senior rater, which is at the wing level. So this is kind of old, but I think you get the point. You need those bullets that actually distinguish you from your peers, whatever they are. So next slide. I think that's it. Okay, can we take any questions? Is that a possibility? I know we went through that kind of fast. If anyone has any questions, like I said, please just chime in. You can do it via chat, or you can just come up mic. That's fine too.
Hey, Chief, this is Sergeant Kraus over in CE.
Yeah, hey, man, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. So you were talking about breadth of experience and DSD. Do you feel that special duties that aren't DSD'd are not as important, I guess you would say?
No, I look, so for me personally, I look for anything you do outside the career field, anything you do outside of your comfort zone, I look reflect on favorably. So even if you did, let's say, if you're a dorm manager, right? So our current dorm manager, he's an ammo troop. And now he's doing dorm manager. He stepped outside of his comfort zone and is doing something completely different. I looked at that favorably. So it doesn't have to be DSD specific. It could be any job that challenges you and that helps you grow. That's what I reflect on. Now, I will say this, so one caveat to that, Sean Krause. First sergeants, I gave a lot of love to, and here's why. So the whole part of promoting people is especially, so remember, I sat on a senior board, so senior to chief. So we were promoting someone into the triad, right? The triad being the commander, the first sergeant, and the chief. If you performed as a first sergeant and you did well for 3 years, you were already proven that you can be part of that triad and function effectively. You have the leadership to be in a triad, so you already have some of that knowledge and some of that training. I look at that favorably at a board, especially first sergeants who roll back into their career field. So I did give maybe a little bit more love to first sergeants for that reason, but anything that pushes you outside of your comfort zone and it makes you expand, I look for that and I love that. So does that help, Sean Krause?
A little, I guess, yes, absolutely. But I guess I was just looking at more. So you mentioned dorm managers. That's
Yep.
That's still DSD'd.
Oh yeah. So
Okay.
Here's let's see if we can think of an example that's not.
So I have an example.
Fire.
I was a silver flag instructor.
Say that one more time.
I was a silver flag instructor. Now I get it. That's my career field. I'm just teaching my career field. It's almost like teaching tech school, but it's not. So it's not DSD'd. I just don't feel my board score reflects that. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah. So did you get the T designator, which is a tech school trainer or a trainer as part of your AFSC that would show up on your OCB?
I did. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So I reflected. I gave. Remember though, that's only one category. So we're talking about breadth of experience, right? So if you just did that and the other 6 categories you weren't above and beyond, then you're not going to get that high board score. Remember, it's across all 7 of those categories. So if you're excelling in one area but not in the others, then the board score is not going to reflect that if that makes sense.
It does.
Especially, yeah, and I'll just be honest with you, Sergeant Krause. So the distinguishers, right? The things that really pop, because those are the things that when you're just scanning EPRs and you don't have enough time to read and study, those are the things that stand out. And when you get ready to put that numeric value in there, that's the real difference maker when you're scanning through EPRs. But I can look at your EPRs, man, and can tell you exactly where they're at. Not a problem.
Chief, you got way too much to do instead of that. You're okay, Chief.
No, this is important to me. So I offered this the last time I did this, and people took me up on it, and it's important to me because professional growth, preparing you to take my job is probably my most important job. So absolutely, send them to me. Fire.
You do not have any decks. How do you make up those points from Sergeant Carver?
Yeah, that's a good question. So remember, decorations are now omitted from they're no longer part of the board score. Remember, last year they took them out beginning with the chief board. So it used to be 25 points. They just got rid of them, and here's the Air Force's thinking behind that. The decorations are already accounted for in specific achievement in the board score. So it was kind of a double tap. So that's why they got rid of them. How do you make up for them if you don't have them? Other awards. So that's the only way. So remember, specific achievement, there's only a couple other ways you can do this. You can either do it through functional awards, quarterly awards, leadership awards, and stratification. Those are the only other way really to make up for the lack of decorations, because it's within that specific achievement category, and you would have to excel in other areas in order to make up for that deficiency, if that makes sense.
And then we got another question from the chat. Is the most recent EPR the most significant towards the board score?
Nope. So keep going.
Were all reviewed EPRs weighed and considered evenly?
Yep. So so to me that never, I keep hearing that, and that doesn't make any sense to me, right? It doesn't. So, and I'll just say this. So, and let me share this as an example. Let me see if I can put this in the right. So you have an individual, right, who failed an FA, but they failed an FA, a fitness assessment. They failed an FA in 2018 and had 2 years to recover. So we write them a deck because they have 2 years to recover from that failed FA. They passed the subsequent, 3 or 4 FAs. So we write them that extended tour deck. You take Airman B, who did great in 18, but his trip up happened in 19, right before he PCS, and he has no time to recover from that trip up. So we don't write him a deck. So he or she is unfortunate at the time their trip up happened. That never registered with me at all. So as far as the continuum is concerned, I looked at all EPRs the same. What I did look at was the grade that you held at the time the EPR was written, right? Were you a young master sergeant, and what role were you filling, and how was your performance, as opposed to were you a more senior master sergeant, what role and how were you performing? So to clarify too, for tech sergeants going to master, we only see your last 3 EPRs. That's it. That's the maximum. For masters going to senior and seniors going to chief, we see 5. So you're talking about a 5-year history. For your edification, it used to be a maximum of 15 EPRs over 10 years. So, and if you remember, before we went to SCOD, you could have an EPR written every 120 days if your rater changed. So it was, most of the time, you had 15 EPRs that met the board. When I met the senior board, I had a senior airman EPR that hit that board. So they got to see my senior airman EPR. So under that construct, yes, your most recent EPR was considered more valuable than the EPR that you did 9 years ago. Under the new construct, it's not. I looked at all those EPRs across the board, and what I'm looking for is sustained performance. That's it. So the biggest policy I saw, and you could see this on the record, and I encourage all of our new master sergeant selects, please don't fall into this. You could literally see airmen taking a year off. They would make master sergeant. Their next EPR would be just bland. They got and then the next year they pick it back up. So, and you could see that. I'm telling you not to do that, because the board's going to see that, and then they're gonna know immediately. Okay, so you picked it up performance when it was important for you, not when it was important for your airmen or the Air Force, and that will be reflected negatively. So we are looking for sustained performance across all 5 of those EPRs, or all 3 of those EPRs. So I hope that helps, and I hope that makes sense. So I think the carryover from the recent EPRs, the most recent being the most important, I think that's a carryover from the old construct of a few years ago, when it used to be 15 EPRs that the board had to look at. Like I said, I dealt the board when they reviewed my records, gave two won't swear online. Didn't care much about that senior airman EPR that I had. I don't think they did. So, though that leads me into another thing for supervisors. Make sure you're putting any significant level awards into your airmen's decorations, and put them in the last 2 lines if you can. So while we don't get to see the EPRs more outside of that 5-year span, we do get to see every single decoration narrative. So if you're coming up for a senior or master and you made airmen below the zone, I will know that. So I will know that you've been kicking ass since you were an airman, and here you now as a master sergeant, and that does weigh into the thinking. And so make sure if you're a supervisor, you're doing that for your airmen. Put them in the last 2 lines too. Don't bury them in the middle. So.
And then I have a question about related to the EPRs being weighted. so you see the last 5 or 3, are all of them graded, or only the ones where you were eligible?
So great question. Nope. So the minute, so for tech to master, it's only in that grade, right? So only the EPR. So you have only the EPRs in your tech sergeant grade. Those are the only ones I review. For the others, it's just your last 5. So whatever grade you held. Yeah. So that's the answer. And not every single one of them gets a grade. We grade based on the entire package. So all EPRs, all decorations, you get 1 numeric grade from 6 to 10 from each of the board members on that. So that's it. We just look at everything, go through. And I will tell you, again, just more, sometimes you look at that OCB, which is the SERP that we looked at earlier, and you can just tell that this airman's probably not going to be competitive, but you have to train yourself, especially when you're on package number 1,000, and it's the second week, it's the Thursday of the second week, and you're just tired from doing this 12 hours a day. You have to train yourself mentally to put that past you and give this airman the same look that you gave every other airman, and then go through those records with the same diligence that you did with the other preceding that. So, but that's tough to do. I'm telling you, that's tough to do. So you do 1 board and that's enough, unless you're a glutton for punishment. So I can't imagine doing a tech sergeant to a mass arm board. Those are a lot of records. So every chief will have a different perspective. You're lucky here on Beale Air Force Base. We actually have a couple of chiefs that sat on board. Chief Stevens has sat on, I believe he sat on an E7 board. Chief Artist sat on a board this cycle, so he's got the most current information. Hit him up. Chief Will Beretta sat on a board 55 years ago, so he's the oldest chief on base. Love you, Will. So he can offer insight, and what you'll find is kind of different perspectives, and you should get everyone's perspective and seek that out. But it's funny, because ultimately, like for wing stratifications, right, and we all do our strats, we'll bring the spreadsheet in, and I'm telling you, it's relatively close. We may have one outlier here and there, but most of us are within 1 or 2 rankings of each other, which says most chiefs are looking for what I just tried to detail in this brief. So you have to set yourself apart from your peers. You have to, if making senior, master, senior, and chief is something you want. So
I have another question.
Yeah.
So when you are sitting down to start grading a package, what are the first couple things that you look at?
So that's a fantastic question, and that leads me, that's actually good. So job responsibility, don't throw those 4 lines away. Please don't, because I see cut and paste every single year, just the same damn, that's where you get a chance to show your scope of responsibility. So don't throw those away, and don't use the same 4 lines that your friend over here is using. Hey, just can you give me my job responsibility so I can pay? No. Craft those to what you're actually doing so you can show your scope of responsibility, because I do look at those. I usually look at the first line, which should be the job responsibility, which should be your hard, what are you most responsible for, and then a proceeding order. So when I look for when I look at a package, I look for this. I look for, first and foremost, most importantly, is performance within your job. How are you doing in your job? What I find is most mass sergeants, most seniors are killing it. Most of our mass sergeant seniors they're just damn good. Then it proceeds to, what are you doing outside of your AFSC as it relates to airmen? I'll just be honest with you. If you're coaching an outside soccer league, or you're coaching your kids' little league, I don't care about that. I'm just being honest with you. I don't. I care about what you are doing for other airmen across Recce Town. So it's great that you're doing all those other things, like picking up trash in the community and all that. That's awesome. But for me, you're not going. I'm going to throw that line away if I see it on an awards package or whatever, because it doesn't help airmen. So, and that's, as a senior NCO, that is our primary charge, right? That's what we should be doing. I'm not telling you not to do those other things. I'm just being honest with you when I look at a package. And then I'm looking for distinguishing line. So I hate this. I hate it. But awards do matter, guys. They just do. Not to me, but to everyone else too on the board, right? Because they're the one thing that I can look at when I'm cycling through your EPRs, and if I see an award, that's kind of like it's almost an easy button, and that's why I don't like it. But it is a distinguisher, right? It just is. It's showcasing. It is something different that's on your EPR that's not on your peer EPR. and it's specific achievement, right? So oftentimes, especially at the senior master sergeant level, you won't put yourselves in for awards because you don't want to take away from master sergeants, and that's awesome, and that's a good mindset to have. But I'm telling you, there are enough where you could do both. So because you're still cultivating your careers as well, and that's important for you to show that you're exceeding within your units and within your groups and within your wing. So let the master sergeants have the quarterlies, if you will, the functionals, but when it comes time to like a SIJON, like the leadership award, and if you are doing it, that's where the senior master sergeant should look to, or somebody should be looking at the senior master sergeant and say, hey, let me take care of you for this one right here, because they do matter, and I'm just being as honest as I can with you. So along with decorations, they do matter. So because those are, again, specific achievements that set you apart from your peers. So especially if you get, which is why we control them. Let's say you're a senior airman and you get a commendation medal, or you're a tech sergeant and you get an MSM above board medal, right? Those things matter because they were showing you were performing above your job responsibility and with the grade that you held at that time. So, which is why we guard them very, very closely. So, a good question. That is a small chat window.
Yeah.
Holy. There it is.
Couple more questions. Did I hear that correctly? Only my tech sergeant EPRs are looked at. So if it is the member's first time testing, only the last 2 EPRs are looked at?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're not going to look at your staff sergeant EPR going to the board. It's, if you look at the AFI, it's the records you hold in the current grade. So that's correct. If the first time it will be 2. So we won't look at your staff sergeant EPR. For tech to master, that is not true going from senior to from master to senior and senior to chief. We'll look at the last 5, whatever grade they are. And by the way, that's a great system. I'll tell you, I am glad the Air Force did that, because let's say back in the day, if you got a markdown and you were going from senior to chief, a markdown on your EPR would linger and haunt you for 5+ years, if forever, right? The competition to select the top 1% from the top 2.5% is incredible. So any type of markdown in the old day under the old system was that you were done, and you typically what had happened is you would see that individual just kind of lose motivation and just slow down. So I am so much happier that we have this new system that if there was, because I'll just be honest with you too, not all raters are equal. So a rater may mark someone down that didn't deserve a markdown, and vice versa. A rater may mark somebody all the way, to the right that doesn't deserve all the way to the right. Which is why under the new systems, I mean, I don't care too much about the markings, right? If you have a mark back on you, I don't care too much about if it was 1 or 2, right? Now, if I see a whole bunch of different ones from different raters, then I'm going to start thinking, okay, then this is probably justified. But if you have like 1 mark back from 1 rater and the other like 4 are not that way, obviously the rater, it was the rater's problem, right? And not so much the ratee's problem. They saw it differently than the other 4 raters did. So it's a bit of a different mentality this day, where back in 5 years ago, a mark back would be like, oh shit, you're not competitive. But that's not the case today, which is great. I think it's awesome. So don't allow a single mark back or 2 on your EPRs prevent you or think that's going to be detrimental, because it's simply not. So it won't be. Yeah.
I said, got it. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? You can write it in the chat, or you can just you can talk too.
Yeah. Talking is preferred.
Do you have some questions, Jana?
I don't think so. I think one of the comments that really had for discussion is I wanted your opinion on one of the things you highlighted is having so many different perspectives. So do you find value, or how much do you place value in members actually seeking perspectives outside of their career field?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, and thank you. That's actually a great point. because it's two. Yes, you absolutely should, because there is no as a 9 golf, I could sit on a variety of boards, right? I might not just sit on, so my career field used to be 3 Delta. So the 9G, I could sit on a COP board. I could sit on a CE board. So that's 2 things. Yes, you should absolutely seek opinions outside your career field, especially when it comes to your EPRs. Because I know there's a tendency, especially at the tech sergeant and master sergeant level, to write highly technical EPRs that people in your career field can't understand. They're loaded with so many acronyms, and please don't load your EPRs with acronym. If I have to break my cycle to go from here to here, it just screws everything up, right? So try to limit your acronyms, use plain language that can be understood from individuals outside your career fields. Because there's no guarantee that the 2 chiefs on your board are going to be AFSCs, chief from your AFSC. So you need to write those EPRs in plain language while still distinguishing yourself from your peers. So absolutely, I would strongly recommend it. I did it when I was a young senior. I had a COP chief look at my EPRs. So and it helped. So because COM, probably worse, COM and Intel, we are probably the worst at writing highly tactical EPRs that nobody else can understand. So I always bounce it off him, and I think that helped me, just helped me immeasurably. So good question. Appreciate that. But we've been 45 minutes, so if there's no more questions,
All right.
I think that's good, right?
I actually have a question, but I'd rather ask it offline.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, that's a good point. So, if anybody wants me to review their records, if you're a senior, if you're a master or senior, send me your last 5. If you're tech, send me your last 3, along with your certs, and I will give you an estimation of what your projected board score is, and I will also show you. It's a chart. I'll show you where you're strong and where you're weak at. The only thing I ask is just give me a little bit of time to do them. Typically, what I have to do is I'll take them home and work on them at night, and then provide you feedback in the near future. So please send it to me if you have any questions. Email me. And I promise I will get back to you, because this stuff is important. It's important to me because I want all of you to be successful. I want you to understand how this works. So, and I'll be quite candid with you as well. So as much as I can be. The board, during the board charge, there are some things that you're allowed to say and you can't say and all that stuff, but I'll be as candid as I can be. One thing I did forget to mention is every year the board is charged to look for special things as deemed necessary by the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So I'll tell you, during this cycle, E8 board, they were told to look for post-secondary degrees. So that was every year there's something special that the Air Force desires in their senior NCO career fields. Again, for this cycle, it was post-secondary degrees. And you can go out in my peers. It's out there. The board charges are actually out there. And if anybody wants it, I can send it to you to show us. And in that board charge is the special criteria that the board members are charged to look for. And again, it was post-secondary degrees, because as the Chief General Goldfein said, it's an indication that this individual is ready to, that one, they're typically more articulate, they can write at a higher level. Not always the case, right? But that's kind of what we look for in our senior NCO tiers. If you haven't noticed, over the last 10 years, we expect a hell of a lot more out of our senior NCOs than they did when I first came in. And again, just being blunt, a lot of our senior NCOs these days are doing company grade, are doing the officer's job of the Air Force I came into 20 years ago, just simply because there's so much work to do. And this is a good thing. Our enlisted force is highly educated. They're smart. Every time I go out and talk to an airman, I'm just blown away. So our senior NCO Corps is proven capable of doing this function. And so it's not going to change in the future. In fact, I see it progressing worse in a post-COVID-19 environment as resources continue to roll back. We all were scheduled to expand to 350,000 airmen at 7,000 airmen a year clip. That's just not going to happen. It's just not. And the post-COVID-19 I expect our resources to not be as sufficient as they were over the last 2 years. So something we all have to prepare for. The senior NCOs of tomorrow You're going to be expected, just more is going to be expected from you.